Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday to you, Clint Skutchan, and joined by Nobu Hata, who is going to be joining the good side. I saw that post in an AEI group, and I was like, well, I had to come up with a title for our conversation, so I figured I would just use that, joining the good side. So welcome to the good side.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. It's gonna be good times.
I have to start with the obvious question, though. You've just been named the next CEO for the Denver Metro Association of Realtors, but I really want to know who the next CEO is, because when is Oliver actually just going to take over the association?
Dude, yeah, sooner rather than later, I think at this point, he's like his mother, where everything is like, we got to get ready to go. Yeah, so we've already enrolled him in like college and stuff like that. So yeah,
Did you get
hopefully
him an
I
AE school? Did they have one of those?
uh, School of Hard Knocks, man. It's gonna be good.
Yeah.
He's following his mom being the closer in her real estate business here in Chicago. So it's gonna be an easy transition when she goes to Denver.
Awesome. For those that don't know, Oliver is Nobu's little guy, and yeah, using words like dystopian and taking over the world. So I just assumed that he's going to supplant you as the CEO very soon.
Dude, have at it. I just wish he'd learn how to catch a ball at this point. We got to work on the physical stuff next.
The physical stuff. The actual obvious question is why the shift over? I think so many of you are aware of your past. Coming through the as a realtor and getting involved with YPN at N.A.R. and then moving into an actual capacity at N.A.R. But ultimately now landing in the association space. Why?
And for those of you guys who know me out there in the Zoom world, I think y'all know my desire to help agents, brokers, the industry kind of get to what's next quicker. And what I found was that it's really hard to do that at NAR. Real estate's so local. Real estate is so Main Street versus Chicago and DC. It was becoming harder and harder to do without being kind of immersed in it day to day. And the allure of Denver, the allure of D.M.A.R was that it not only is a fantastic community to call home, but it's almost kind of like the nexus of all things cool that are happening in real estate, in the industry, and in life, right? What community means in Denver has changed so much in the last couple of years.
Oh, yeah.
To be part of that, especially for the real estate industry, was an allure that I couldn't deny. And it was time, it was time at N.A.R to kind of to dial it back and to spend time at home while also helping realtors is something that many people know I'm passionate about. I'm committed to it, and I'm looking forward to doing it full time for the Denver Metro Realtors.
So I know, just from our conversations that you did have other opportunities, and, you have a tech mind, you've traveled the country, you've seen kind of, what it takes to be innovative and next steps and all those things. So I have to imagine that you had other opportunities, whether it be in a consulting role or in the tech space or all these going back into brokerage. Ultimately, how did you weigh out this opportunity against those other opportunities, which I imagine you had to have had?
Yeah, specifically with the technology space, those opportunities were always there. And what was cool is that while I did get some offers, they understood the fact that real estate, especially now in this post-pandemic, post-social unrest world, the people aspect is something that as an agent and as a association staffer and as a leader, I was passionate about. And the technology roles that were out there were just too broad. I might as well have stated N.A.R, right, for any of the broad kind of like shallower impact on people's businesses. So yeah, it was a mix of that and the actual location itself, because it was just weird. I was in Colorado almost 10 times last year, 6 times in last June alone. And talked to the leadership at D.M.A.R and the person who ended up helping me with the job there. It was just kind of fate. And sometimes when you got to listen to your gut, and my gut was telling me to do this, so I listened to it. My gut luckily hasn't been wrong the last last decade or so.
I mean, I'm one of those. I often ask because, doing whether it's strategic planning sessions or just working with leadership in general, it's like, how do you go about making really important decisions? And there are just those that are like that. And I'm one of those where it's like, you just know it in your gut. Like that's the intuition piece is just significant. And sometimes you just know when you know. I want to welcome everyone that's still popping on. Be sure to, if you guys want to have chat in the side, that's a part of this. Certainly, Nobu and I are doing a one-on-one conversation today. But any questions or comments or thoughts that you have, throw them up in the chat portion. Or if you just want to jump on and ask a question of Nobu yourself, raise your hand and we'll pull you in, and we can make this more interactive rather than just Nobu and I, although I'll enjoy having a conversation with Nobu anytime. Talk about the hiring process, and what that was like going through the interview stages. We do some work in that space. And so we talk to a lot of candidates and we work with organizations on the hiring. It's a really unique and challenging process to go through, especially when it's a high demand position like I would have imagined that N.A.R.'s was.
Yeah, yeah. I'll preface it with this, that the process itself, up until the point of the interaction with the search committee, was pretty much the same as some of the other ones that I've experienced. This is the first time I've gone through this kind of CEO process. This is obviously the farthest I've gone into it. I will say though that right around the time I started getting serious about it was when we all went under quarantine, right? So as you know, and as a lot of folks who are on this Zoom call know, that realtors who are a major part of the search committee love the face-to-face, and we couldn't do that. And I think the biggest kind of hurdle was everyone getting comfortable with Zoom. It was right before Zoom became a verb. Zoom is now a big verb, right? Zoom doesn't mean anything what it mean pre-COVID, now post-COVID.
Right.
So it was interesting having the interview process happening over Zoom. And for somebody like me, who's kind of a major people person as well, reading the room, reading the people, reading body language is important.
Yeah, it's huge.
And when no one is comfortable staring into the green light in their laptops, and me on the other end, kind of knowing when people have kind of zoned out, and I don't think it was their doing. They were working at the same time they were Zooming with me, which was
Absolutely.
funny. Yeah, it made me realize very quickly that what hiring looks like, right? What a digital virtual leader, put that in quotes, is going to be. And that hiring process of that person is going to change. Zoom is now an art that needs to be taught. Distance engagement is an art that needs to be taught. And I think that was the biggest eye-opening piece for me, right? After that, it was several of these Zoom calls. I think we all learned, what exactly do we want out of it? We set expectations, which was really, really cool, about what we were going to be chatting about, so that I can be prepared. I can engage with you and answer your questions succinctly without being able to look you in the eye. It was a really fun experience, and made me think about, in the future, if I'm going to be hiring remote staff, how I'm going to be hiring that person together with the existing brick and mortar staff that I'll be inheriting at N.A.R. So it was a learning experience. It was a lot of fun, and I think the fact that more and more people are going to be remote working, being able to hire talent from anywhere is something that the association level we're going to have to start thinking about, and I'm looking forward to putting that into play when I get to N.A.R. Learned a lot from it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I did talk radio for 10 years, and I would always reflect back on that to interaction, and because it's so difficult, as you're pointing out, and as people are learning through Zoom. You're seeing all the musicians. I know you love music and we talk music all the time, but watching these musicians try and perform live without the feedback of the audience. Or last night I watched Supercross, where they're doing this, competition event without, a live audience. And you really have to retrain yourself to be in the moment, to be present, and to understand that it's not necessarily about the immediate feedback or the energy that you have around you, but rather the confidence to deliver the information with the understanding that it will be received well.
Yep, and being able to know when you've elicited that emotion, that reaction that you wanted, that you may not be able to see immediately in that Zoom call. It was really interesting, and I think there's a lot to learn from it. It's it'll be fun times when more of us are going to be doing this as part of our business infrastructure.
Yeah, we had a question that was sent in earlier from a good friend of both yours and mine, Justin Knoll, who's in the D.M.A.R area, and I'll talk about that, the bricks and mortar aspect in a moment. But you brought up an interesting component of, what does staffing now look like? You see where, Facebook is saying, yeah, sure, you guys can go remote, you can work where you want, but the salary's not, the San Francisco salary is not going with you. But there is some ability now to look at talent outside of your general marketplace. That's a complete shift in mindset of how you would go about attaining talent to surround yourself with, and sharing talent, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's opportunities there at the association level for a lot of collaboration that might not have been possible in the past. I think there's a lot of collaboration potential that can happen with in and outer industry that may not have happened in the past. And I mean, you just look at the positives. The talent pool now is open wide, right? And frankly, we're in real estate, and the people who are making the most money in real estate are the salespeople, right? So in order to get to acquire talent, they might not be in your backyard, but if they're allowed to work from home and commute in, we're good. To me, I think the biggest thing that needs to happen is good metrics, right? And real estate metrics have always been, I see you doing X, Y, and Z, right? And you give me your report. Metrics in the future right now going in the future are going to have to be a lot better than that. And that's something that I'm gonna be hitting the ground running with the D.M.A.R staff. I actually had this conversation yesterday with them. I'm a big stats guy, and to set a base level of what they think success is and what success could mean going forward, and start to compile that starting right now is something that I'm going to stress and definitely commit to, so that they can have that freedom. I personally don't think that at the staff level, folks are going to be truly comfortable engaging, especially with us. We're engaging with so many people that they're going to be fully comfortable going back, right? So at least fully. So staggered staffing, virtual staff, virtual engagements is something I will study a lot and implement as much as I can into what is a very brick and mortar business.
Yeah, we've been doing flash polls of association and MLS executives recently, and one of the questions we asked in our 2.0 version of that was about returning to the office, and over the next 30 days, about half of the folks are going back. But then when you ask about the remote staffing, which we did in the first flash poll, there's a lot of that. No, we're still going to retain remote, and just visiting with folks around the country, you're hearing all these different strategies of who's in the office and how often and all of that. That's a real thing that we're going to start to deal with. With that in mind, Chris, who's running the background here, if you've got that poll about bricks and mortar, if you want to put that up, I do want to ask about the bricks and mortar concept too, because it is changing. It's obviously changing within real estate as a whole, but Justin, as I mentioned, asked, what do you see the future of bricks and mortar of offices for D.M.A.R yourself? And I think you started to allude to it, but all other associations. And for me, it's kind of that, moving from bricks and mortar to the idea of virtual and visual, and how do we do that? But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think brick and mortar, boy, if you're a commercial agent right now, I think if you're not freaking out, you're probably not paying attention. I think the future of brick and mortar in general is going to be smaller. I think it's going to be tactical and strategic, right? So maybe better meeting spaces, maybe better remote learning spaces and production spaces. Kind of like what's happening in Inman right now. I think we'll see a lot more of that type of brick and mortar converting into a here's what we're going to be broadcasting kind of thing. But what I foresee a lot of is, at least at the present point right now, the members need that interaction. People need it. I mean, as a consumer of real estate right now, I need it, right? So at least right now, you've got the need for a meeting space. In real estate, we have to, in my mind, we still have to have something to drive home what engagement means. And when you think about real estate in general, right? A lot can happen virtually, but man, the house that we we had put in our purchase agreement was a lot different in real life, right? Our members are helping people sell brick and mortar every day. So there's that middle ground that is, I think, going to be a constantly moving target. Right now, it's a little more skewing to the, I need to get back and talk with my buddies and be brick and mortar in a smaller footprint. But maybe later, 5 years out, 10 years out, it's going to be a transition to a broadcasting space, a tactical engagement space. Eye-to-eye meetings will happen where decisions are made in person, with digital kind of filling the void in between to get kind of the micro decisions done. Mm-hmm. And that needs to be trained. That for sure. Leadership in the Zoom world is something that needs to be trained right now, because I'll tell you, talking to regular consumers about this, who have had senior leadership, maybe C-suite leadership, people like my friend, my wife's clients, who say, I'm tired of Zoom. I've been doing Zoom for a month straight. I'm freaking tired of it. Now, what used to be an email turned into conference calls now are face-to-face, and I don't need 90% of it. And it's what that 90% isn't, could be where brick and mortar can go away. It could be filled with, I think, next generation brick and mortar, because people still need experiences, right? You're seeing it now. We used to be here in Chicago, for example, people don't have yards, don't have big lawns. And what's happening is you're seeing indoor play spaces open up, and they're thriving right now, right? What are those experiences going to be 5 years out, 10 years out? In real estate, the association world, that is what I'm going to be focusing on, so that the digital, we can work on training a focused and disciplined membership and leadership core that understands where the digital space is and where the real world space comes in, and the infrastructure will meet that.
Yeah, and Kevin just messaged in, and I think he hit it on the head here. Is we now know that we can, but the question is, and especially in leadership roles, is should we? Because it can't become this throwaway of, well, just because we can, that's the way we should do it, and not thinking through, is this a deeper engagement opportunity? And in particular, when you subtract out the MLS, which is that utility, the day-to-day needed resource for members and subscribers, versus the association, advocacy, education, connectivity component, which is experiential, right? And so that's interesting to me anyway, to see. And so that becomes, you're right, this new leadership understanding, and you have to be able to read the situation of the room. And one of those things that I think that's really interesting, and I'm curious about for you, is you mentioned this idea of, through your process of interviewing, what it was like to try and develop relationships and understand the culture of D.M.A.R. Now you're going to be moving into a situation where you're going to be starting to, and I know Ann there, and hey, Ann, I think she was watching, she's awesome, love Ann and the culture that they've created at D.M.A.R. But ultimately, when you come in as a new executive, you want to put a little bit of your stamp on what that culture is, and a lot of that goes back to the relationships that you forge with staff. So how do you envision, if it is a combination of virtual and in person, how do you envision developing that culture that you want for your organization over the next 6-12 months in this new setting?
Yeah, to me, and I love the fact that we're talking about it. I've had more conversations about culture over the last 3 weeks than I think the last 2 years combined, which is fantastic. You know what was really appealing about D.M.A.R. was that they, at least on paper, looked as if there was already a culture of outward, no holds barred. Here's what we're doing. Here's what's happening. Here's how we're going to help you as the member. And what was refreshing was that I met staff, and what I saw on paper actually met the reality of my interactions with them now. Now, is it going to be perfect? Probably not. I think to me, it's about better. I'm not looking forward to like, I'm not going to go in there and say, hey, this is my view of culture. It's my job to integrate myself into that and to bring what I bring to the table and add to that culture. And my whole, and this is what I told them yesterday, it's not enough anymore, because I could see that you're being very member centric. I think the subtle tweak that we're going to have, a little small pivot, is going to be member business centric, which adds, it takes the existing foundation, but adds that element of, okay, we're going to think a little more dollars and cents to other business owners, right? And that fits in well with what they've already bringing to the table, while also exuding the transparency, the inclusiveness, the flat way of operating, right? It's not, at the end of the day, association is association work. We're all going to get our hands dirty. And it's that type of culture I want to continue to propagate and improve upon as the industry changes. Because when I think about internal culture, that has to exude to a really good ROI and a good reason for me as a business owner to want to engage with Denver Metro at the association level. I want to be able to go and say that every single one of us cares about you, our community, and your business, right? Which, as soon as you start thinking about that way and leading with business, it allows for a kind of a broader conversation with things that might be taboo subjects like politics, right? The thing that separates realtors from licensees and technology companies. It will exude that. They've built a really good ship. I told Lanning yesterday, I'm so lucky that I'm walking into a job that she has created an excellent foundation. And every person I've talked to is, what's that next step? How can we build our culture to make the next step easier to attain? And I'm so stoked for that, because they're ready. They're ready for it, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, forward thinking is so important. Results on the poll says it looks like about 50% say they're not anticipating any change, and then about 25, give or take, in terms of downsizing or even going to virtual offices. So there's some change that's coming there, and we could probably really get into the details and the weeds in terms of how we see office space changing. And this now from having looked in on the Denver market and been in Chicago about the changing supply and demand and all of those aspects. I think there's really an interesting future in conversions for commercial spaces to being multi-use, not just as a building, but as the commercial spaces themselves, to address some housing concerns that many communities are facing, and especially so in these areas, where there's some concentrated opportunities. But maybe we set that one aside for now. I think it's going to be very interesting to look at. For those that don't know, in the Denver metro area, you'll be coming into a regional MLS. So RE Colorado is the regional MLS there. So you're coming in and you're able to focus entirely on the association, which, it's an article I'm writing now for our upcoming newsletter, our T3 Insights, that talks about understanding the level of dependency between the association and the MLS. There's completely dependent, which I think we really have to move away from, regardless of size in the association and MLS capacity, because you're handicapping both your association's focus and delivery, and at times you're extracting resources from the MLS to prop up the association. There's kind of more of this idea of independence with different levels, and then there's a cooperative, and I think there are different ways to succeed within a cooperative model and an independent model. Yours is one that's independent, but that doesn't mean that MLS isn't important. So what's your view on how you approach running a highly sophisticated resourced association, but also still having this important resource of MLS to be able to message to and leverage for your membership?
Yeah, my wife is here in MRED, right? And MRED is almost in the same boat as RE Colorado is. Here's the thing, right? We in the association world can think about and hem and haw about the place where the association and the MLS meet. But I got to tell you, when I go out and when I was an agent in multiple states, through my leadership, N.A.R, and even now, I can't tell you how many agents, brokers, especially the busy ones, that could care less. They could not care less that who owns what in the MLS world. They all feel as if the only reason why they are a realtor is because they need access to the MLS. And in years past, many of my colleagues and I would kind of agonize over that. But in my mind at this point, I think it's just time to embrace it and say, hey, yeah, you may think that, but let's get beyond that right now. It's not only the MLS, but it's all of these other things that add value, right? So, the sleek contract stuff that I was using to sign off my purchase agreement in Colorado was awesome. That's a member benefit. reach companies from N.A.R, which is something, innovation and progress being brought in-house. How does that integrate better into the broker ecosystem? It's everything that the association offers. I want to actually use at least the present thought that I don't really care, I want to use that as actual momentum. It's going to be my at the core of my broker outreach, while figuring out what their pain points are, and knowing what those pain points in RA Colorado are. It's something that I'll be taking real insight, being able to speak realtor, being able to speak broker to realtors and brokers is something that is a advantage that I've got that many others don't. But being able to relay what that actually means back to the RE Colorado leadership, with our leadership at N.A.R, and how we can move forward. Because what's definitely, and you see the writing on the wall, right? While the MLSs, they're consolidating, power is being consolidated into regions. And, more than anything, what I want is to have RE Colorado to have a bigger place in that, so that we can start taking this data and turning it into wisdom, and start thinking about how to make a better consumer experience and a better member experience, and move on from these legacy arguments that we probably we're resting too much on. Should have been figured out a long time ago. But in my mind, getting back to these people who are just like, you guys can talk all you want. Here are my pain points. I really don't care about this other stuff, right? Here are the pain points that I truly have from the MLS point of view. You can help. How can you do it? And let's move on from there. So it's that type of cooperation that I really want to bring to the table. I think being the new guy is going to be a thing. And I'll have at least some positive political capital to be able to go and help folks move forward from almost an outsider's point of view, which I think is helpful in this time.
Indeed.
This day and time.
I posted this image. I captured it. Mike Del Prete presented this morning at Inman from the stage, and just talking about
Colorado guy.
Yeah, right up the road. And was just talking about who he sees as being the winners, in the real estate space. And I just think this is reflective of exactly what the association and MLS leaders should be thinking. Those who are able to invest, move fast, and meet consumer demands and member demands are going to win. I captured it because to me it's really summarizes and is succinct about who I see emerging on the other side of all these challenges with, like you said, that forward momentum and winning and kind of taking over the space. And that hasn't necessarily always been a strength of the association world. And again, when you look at this, these dependent models of association and MLS, the MLSs in particular are driven by this need to move quickly and invest and look at that. And if you have this association approach to business development and technology strategies, it's really difficult to compete. Before, when we were behind the curve in the real estate space, now we're being pressed to meet the consumer demands and member demands where they're at today, it's even more difficult. And so I think that's something really to think about. And as you mentioned, it's getting clear about what our roles are, allowing expedient decisions to be made, and to some degree be bold and stop arguing backwards, start focusing forward with our intentions.
Yeah, nimbleness, the ability to pivot. That is an art, needs to be trained. I think the advantage of the MLS and association world is that it is a place where brokers, where agents and consumers meet, which is a very unique place, because even the portals don't have that, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's an advantage that we need to play up, and if associations can help brokers and their members become more nimble about owning the future, we be able to out pivot where we can, because having that data at hand, ready to go, and having the relationships that are daily being brought into the space, right? Some of these guys aren't even, they used to bypass us and go directly to the consumer. I think a lot of them realize that the key to growth is going to be, it's every stakeholder. And we can get leaders to be more nimble and to pivot based on demand, and what demand is coming down the pipeline, we'll all be better for it.
So as you know, again, I don't mean to beat this up, but it's top of mind for me right now, this idea of, interdependency between association and MLS. And one of the key areas of measurement for me is this understanding of core competencies, and they're very different for the association versus the MLS. And I think over the last 60 to 90 days, it's become very clear the association's value proposition and what I would say micro competency is, and that's advocacy, right? And
Yeah.
so we actually asked in our last flash poll about that concept of what have you been participating in, what have you been doing, and I'm gonna see if I can pull that up real quick and share that here. It was essentially, 85% of the folks are actually out there doing something and engaged. And in particular, the states have won out on this, where the state level of advocacy has become important, but that's only effective so long as it has the local level support. So I'm going to hold off on pulling that up for now. But what are your thoughts on the importance of advocacy? And again, this idea of micro competencies as an association, and dismissing the old adage of being everything to everyone, and rather being really excellent at the one thing that no one else can do, which is providing an advocacy voice, not only, as you point out, for members, but for consumers under difficult circumstances.
Yeah, I tell you, from not being at N.A.R during this quarantine time was man, I wish I was there, just because it helping with not the advocacy part. Because here's the thing, right? I think, and this being a former AE, 99.9% of associations, local and state, do a really good job of the advocacy element. The problem is the messaging of the value, right? It wasn't about advocacy during COVID, for example, when we're all quarantined. It was essential service, which is a very human term, which was kind of vague. People really didn't know. Even some of the the regulators and the politicians didn't know what that meant. But the associations fought hard for that. But what is an essential service? What is that? And that, to me, is something that
yeah, Phil says blame the communication guy.
No, but it wasn't, but
Yeah.
it's not
No,
your
it's
fault.
the industry as a whole. It's not the communications
Yeah.
folks. It's the industry as a whole that, I mean, I use advocacy, but, a lot of folks say government affairs or politics or whatever, but ultimately for me, back to your point of messaging, it's always about the home, right? The home is the thing that creates an emotional connection to, and that essential services were because of that, because home, housing, all of that was absolutely essential during all of this, right? So that you're right, the messaging matters.
So it is, and I'll be working with our marketing communication staff, and it's something that
Mm-hmm.
People like Phil and Kevin know of. I know Kevin in Pennsylvania had a tough go of it because of that exact issue, right? But to me, it's using these human terms, these essential services. Humans are essential. Realtors are essential in a very human industry, and that is something actually I'm gonna go really get my staff to think about as we go along, because the chances of us being back in quarantine in the fall, pretty dang high, right? So to tell the story of what is essential, what did realtors do, right? To help people during a really tough time to buy and sell homes. And I'll tell you, the people who were doing it, they were thriving during quarantine time. They were thriving at it. They had clients coming out of the woodwork because of it. But to be able to go and create the opportunity for every realtor out there to not only see these stories of what essential means, but how it relates to the advocacy element, how that 365 days out of the year, that tone is putting more money in your pocket, is the best way to not only resonate with the member, but with consumers as well, who might be going, what do I do now? I was planning on selling my home. Now I can't because I'm going to be under quarantine for the next month. I'm thinking about right now how that looks like in the fall, and how we could tell the story of essential to not only our members and these folks listening to our advocacy message in the various capitals around the country and in Denver, how we can do it better so that we don't have these issues. We're leading the conversation rather than being a product of it come fall. It's fun, puts a really cool element of messaging in front and center, which I'm looking forward to, because this is the one thing. Advocacy is the one thing that separates realtors from everybody else. And it helps people save time, and it helps people make money and save money. And that is a thing that right now, every company that is resting on that is thriving.
Yeah, and I'm going to go back to the flash poll now. We asked about the impacts to members' business, and of course, the idea that all three levels are important, right? But the way it scored out over the last 60 to 90 days, folks said that the state advocacy work was, the most important and most impactful, and the local advocacy work actually showed up as being the least. But I'm really encouraging clients now, as the decision making makes it's a crescendo, right? It started as a national level issue, then it's a state level issue, and then it becomes a local issue. And as you point out, there are going to be a lot of micro level, local level discussions about development, and even look, all these governments are going to be hit hard on taxes, and if real estate's still blowing and going, it's going to be a huge target. It's going to get targeted at a local level. So we asked them about, okay, well, what does that look like upcoming? And it looks like, over the next 60 to 90 days, most still believe state's really important because of all the decision making, the mechanisms that it triggers in terms of activity. But now you start to see the local even jumping ahead of the national, according to all the executives that we polled out there. And I believe this to be true. I would actually flip-flop the state and the locals, because now is the time for real estates and associations, as you said, as the only people who are able to really go out and be in this space and be proactive. They should be working ahead to the solutions that they want to see in their marketplace, not waiting for the elected officials to define what that is.
Well, and you look what happened in this whole kind of COVID situation. So much was left to even at the county level for decisions on what is essential, what's going to be locked down, when things are going to be let up. So this is to me when you use the momentum that local through state and national created, and now's the time, because you're exactly right. As counties and local municipalities start to look for ways to refill their coffers, now's the time to ask N.A.R for cash. Now's the time to go and figure out some game changer messaging that we can get some cash from N.A.R from, to be able to go and say, hey, you know what? Yeah, we helped you get through this, Denver or whatever county that Denver takes up, but now is not the time to use these consumers as a piggy bank to refill your coffers. Figure something else
100%.
out.
Yeah, I want to hit on one more point, just because it was a great point from a client I was visiting with the other day about, what happens if these things return. And we were talking about, remote work, staff away, come back or not. But one of the best points I've heard is to looking at actually just saying, what, we're going to be mostly remote through the end of the year. And the reason for that is because we can create predictability with the unknown of a return in the fall. What we don't want to do is to rush back or get back into our regular kind of approach, and then we have to disrupt that because it's out of our control. Whereas if we say, for the most part, we're going to look at through the end of the year, we can control this and predictability for staffing. I thought that was an excellent insight, and one that I wanted to make sure to share. And it goes back to the bricks and mortar conversation.
Definitely, I totally agree with that. I mean, now's the time to set a tone of what work looks like, right? So that folks know that they can spend 2 or 3 days at home, work from home, but that, hey, let's start thinking about these stats, these metrics. What does success look like as our members grapple with this? Because they're the ones that are going to have less predictability. They're going to have less ability to control what they can control, because they're going to be they're kind of left to the will of their clients. And right now, we don't know what that looks like, but if we can help shape that through better success metrics, through better events, through better virtual and online learning opportunities, we can help members make more money during a time when a lot of folks are freaking out.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And as you know, the experiences are very different around the country. I mean, what you've experienced in Chicago is very different than what you're now witnessing in Denver. I want to remind folks, if you can throw questions up in the chat if you want for Nobu or I, or you can just raise your hand, click on the participant button and raise your hand and say you want to join. We can pull you in if you have a question for Nobu or myself. But I want to go back to this concept that you've introduced a couple times, and it's something that's really big, and it's a lot of where we're spending time now working with clients that are trying to be progressive and forward looking. It's this idea of membership intelligence, not just membership data. And it really gets to the power of where if you do link your MLS and your association together, you can better understand your members through not only what their activities are as an association member, but what their sales transactions are, and who they are in their day-to-day activities. And so really getting to a level of member intelligence, not just member data. And of course, I'll get on my soapbox here. It sounds like they're moving towards some NERDS improvements, which is Valhalla. That would be great, because that's kind of the epicenter of the ability of these association to better serve and be proactive and thoughtful and have real intelligence on their members. And I've heard you kind of mention that a couple times. Talk us through kind of what your vision is for that, and how you see member intelligence versus member data.
Yeah, at the local level, so it's leveraging the MLS right away, right? And I think that's the opportunity that, regardless of your outlook or thoughts on where REA Colorado goes, what we have the ability of is to look at the sales data of our members and see how they're doing, where they're selling. I can tell you right now, most agents, especially the ones that are busy, don't have a lot of time to think about that type of intelligence, right? Unless they're paying for something. Because even Brokermetrics, what supposedly is supposed to give you this intelligence, really doesn't do that. Looking at the data, seeing who these rising stars are, what the seasoned agents are doing right now, where they're selling, is so helpful at the local level to be able to start thinking about what type of information they're going to need. That alone is awesome. But I'll tell you, a lot of this shouldn't be a surprise. At N.A.R. last year, what information the data scientists had already told the story that a lot of us knew, is that you've got, as an association staffer, 5 years to make an agent a success. Most drop out after their first 1 or 2, that first kind of license cycle. But at year 3, if you haven't made a dent engaging with agents in general, they drop off. They just don't engage with you. They don't care about going to your classes. They're the ones that are spending 10 grand to go to Inman, or spending 50,000 on Bold for KW. So it's harnessing that. It's like, where do DMAR agents stand when it comes to that 5-year plan? Is it a 5-year plan? Is it more of a 3-year plan because of the incredible amount of growth that's happening there? And that, to me, is of interest to me. Is maybe that needs to be tweaked. But right now, all we have is that sales information, and turning that into strategy and into tactics is going to be a lot of fun. And it's already laid out right there. We just have to do a deep dive into it, and that's one of the things I'll be doing with my staff for that. Where the N.A.R. stuff comes in, like you mentioned, the nerd stuff, like they should have burned that down forever ago. But what's awesome about nerds, that at least who's giving what at RPAC, who is engaged at mid-year, who is going to N.A.R. conventions, which speaks to the intent of a lot of folks. Where are they going? What are they going to go beyond sales, right? And what I love about the potential of that is that as soon as you start thinking outside of your local associations, or thinking about states, or thinking about national, now you're talking to somebody who wants to be part of something bigger, who wants to be part of a movement, who wants to be part of a culture that I actually, as someone forced to be a realtor, embrace. I end up loving it, right? Because I found people that spoke my language, and we were able to make a dent in what seems to be an industry that is slow to change. So, from sales to leadership to services and systems and processes, to things like harnessing momentum for folks who might give at greater RPAC levels. These are all things that proper business intelligence can display. And we've got a lot. I think it's just a matter of mashing it up, right? So it's going to be a lot of effort to find these folks who can do it. And they'll probably be calling you on this, frankly. Is what does this data actually mean in the context of a 5-year plan for success? Because no matter what, we could sit there and try to predict where members and brokers and agents are going to be, but if they're not successful, they're not selling homes. It doesn't matter what we do. So starting at that core level, starting at sales and building upon that, I can't wait, because to me it's untapped opportunity that just frankly folks are just too busy to spend too much time deep diving into.
Yeah, and you got to customize their experience based on, and meet them where they are. Yeah, the honeymoon phase is legitimate. I mean, we do tons of member survey work across the country, and as you mentioned, first 3 years, education, engagement, communications, all those rate out very, very highly in those first 3 years, and then you see this precipitous decline. Sometimes they come back towards the end of their careers, but those 7 to 10 and those 11 to 15 and 16 to 20 year members, depending on the market, it kind of fluctuates. fluctuates, but you can just see them throughout. They just rate the association, the MLSs lower in various categories because they're established. They do what they do. They know what they know. They
Yeah.
don't need anything. And so if you don't establish your value proposition and at least leave them as they exit those first 3 years with a good feeling and a sense of, well, they helped me get where I'm at. I may not need all these things moving forward, but they were super valuable in launching my career. And so now I need, maybe I can find my ways to give back, whether it's through RPAC or whatever else it is. That honeymoon phase, you have to own it. You have to know it. And honestly, right now with the engagement opportunity, that's one of the things we'll be asking about in an upcoming flash poll. Your orientations, your first impression, because it's been so important in the past, if it's driven more into a virtual setting like this, you've really got to be thoughtful about what that is, because you only get one shot to leave that first impression.
Yep. And it's slow and steady. It's more of the same, and it's pivoting when you need to. I'm all about attracting business. I'm all about retaining members while using them to attract others. I'd rather, staff brought it up yesterday. I'd rather have 500 members who are just kicking butt in their markets as broker owners or as agents, because of the services that we offered based on the intelligence that their activity is bringing to the table. Because those are the people that are become raving fans and get in a very social industry like real estate is, fill my pipeline as an association CEO, so that my staff can say, hey, you know what? Come on in. We'll make you a better business owner as well.
Yeah, I think all those things very, very important. I want to switch us up here and take us into a completely different subject. I saw some comments the other day from Michelle Mills Clement, who you of course know, who's there in Chicago, running the Chicago Association, and outreaching kind of the AE community and saying, with all the social unrest that's happening, what are you doing as associations to engage? And Chris, if you want to go ahead and get that poll ready to post up, that would be great. What are you doing to engage on this social unrest issue? And there are a variety of opinions, whether you should or shouldn't as an association, but you entering into the association world, frankly, welcome. You just got like 15 years younger because of the average age of the association. I'm still young somehow in this sector, but beyond that, like the diversity is not very high here either. And so with all the things that are going on in the world, what are your thoughts? And you've seen what's happened in Chicago, in the major metros. You've seen a little bit of what's going on in Denver. But what's your general thoughts on the idea of social unrest, social justice, and where does the association fit in, if at all?
Yeah.
Big topic. I get it.
And I'll probably get a little personal here. I mean, personally speaking, I probably felt more as a minority over the last 4 or 5 years. And this is, I grew up in Alaska. I grew up in places, and I sold real estate in a bunch of other markets that are very diverse. And Chicago's diverse, right, in of itself. Also very segregated, but it's a whole other topic. I've felt what you're seeing for a number of years now. And I think it's important, at the very least, at the staff level. You may not have a diverse staff. You may not have, in terms of, their cultural background or whatever, but what you definitely have, no matter what, is going to have a diverse perspectives coming from staff. And that needs to be laid out there. Frankly, I don't know what Ann and those folks are doing at D.M.A.R., but what I've seen is that there's a lot of empathy there, and I think the empathy, at the very least, needs to be from anything that is pointed out to the public. It needs to exude that in a time when the last thing I want to think about is buying, selling a home when I'm either A, afraid of my home being burned down, or B, afraid of the issues that are surrounding what's happening out there with these protests permeating my life, so that I can't buy a home. I love the fact that associations are ingrained in community. I love what Michelle's doing. I love it. The least we can do as people who help other people buy and sell in homes in communities is to help communities rebuild where it needs to. And in Chicago, where I know she and I have talked about it, Michelle's experienced some things as well, in a quote unquote diverse town. The empathy needs to be there, both from the staff level and from any kind of outward communications level. If you have nothing nice to say, just turn your social media off, turn it off, right? because we are ingrained in it. And I think associations far and wide are feeling that right now and are seeing that, it's not just about the members. People help buying and selling homes through their members are active participants in this. And for us to be catalysts for change at the community level, I think is core to any community outreach that needs to happen going forward. I look at housing in general right now as being very elitist. I mean, I'm in Chicago. Regular people can't buy houses here. You know, my wife helps teachers who have saved for 10 years buy houses in the communities in which they teach, and it's the most beautiful thing to see that. And where associations can help is to tell that story, right? That to me is part of essential, and I think that is to me the kind of the base message that we can put out there is that, you know, it's not about real estate, it's about home, it's about community, it's about no matter where these folks are, we represent them from, you know, the first time home buyer who saved for 10 years to get their first home to the, you know, to the retiree moving into their homes to be closer to their grandkids. And to help realtors own home is something that Michelle's doing. You know, helping people own community. It's beautiful, and I think I see a lot of opportunity here with everything that's happening. There's been a lot of negative being portrayed in the media, but the positives that'll come out of this, I think, both not just the civil unrest part, but you know, the quarantine and the desire for human interaction is something we can all build upon as Realtor Association community members.
Yeah, and it can be difficult because, as you say, I mean, politics unto itself is at the core of the value of the association, and yet it can be this very divisive and difficult and taboo subject, and even off-putting to some. And this is obviously has political, social components to it, and so it's difficult to get into this, and yet all important. And the polling coming in, right, it looks like about 30% say they've done something to address it internally with staff. Another 14% saying that they've done outward actions. I saw a lot of the posting, you know, with, you know, racism has no home here across the country.
Yeah.
That one got a lot of momentum. 14% said that or excuse me, 20% saying they're doing yes, all of the above, and 14% say not as of yet, but a quarter are still saying not planning to, and that may be appropriate or okay in some instances, but I think you have to be aware of it and think about it in terms of how it affects community at large. To your point, you know, I'm in Colorado, so you're moving to my backyard, and the level of affluence that's occurred in Colorado over the last 10 years because of the influx from coastal areas primarily has been really telling, because unfortunately the affluence is largely reflected as white. And we didn't have very diverse base to build from. And so places like California and other places where there's this level of affluence and expensiveness to housing, they had a built-in level of diversity, some maybe segregated to your point. But here in places now like in Austin, all these outcroppings of where these major metros are exporting to, and we're seeing the growth, I'm really concerned about what that looks like long-term from a diversity standpoint, because innovation, creativity, all these things that define the communities that we want to live in means that we need to have diversity of thought, diversity of look, all these other items. And that reflects back on the type of advocacy work that you do. It reflects back on the type of housing type that's available, and it reflects on the clientele that our members serve.
Yeah, totally. And I think doing the internal workings of you know, properly integrating diversity and diverse mindset and perspectives is one thing, but then that storytelling after that, so that, you know, it doesn't look as if we're doing it for, you know, special interest group's sake. It's for our community. That's the kicker, because a lot of what's happening, there are a lot of organizations already doing this, right? You know, N.A.R.'s got a great cultural diversity committee, and it's that what needle have they moved, right? I want to tell that story, and I want to go to these communities, and I want to go to these places and bring them into the fold, right? Because at the end of the day, whether they're buying and selling home today, or 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, they are part of the community in which the N.A.R. members, or really any realtor members, serve. you know, whether it's through renting firsthand or buying at the end of the day when they're able to. Let's be a part of that now. And if, you know, N.A.R can help with this, there's some things that I've already talked with Fred Underwood about, who's a great asset there at N.A.R, but also, you know, how we can integrate, properly execute upon that in a town, Denver, that, as you said, is exploding right now, in good and bad ways.
Yeah. Let me ask you, I mean, we're talking kind of externally, but what about the industry as a whole? You know, you have a high level of humor about your diversity in a not very diverse audience, oftentimes internal to industry leadership. And there's been a lot of talk this week during the Inman conference about, you know, leadership, whether it be, you know, female representation, minority representation, but within the industry, it suffers. And it's surprising to me at times when I travel to parts of the country that I see as being far more diverse than where I live, and expecting to arrive in these places and see a leadership that reflects that diversity, and yet the industry struggles. And from a paid staffing position and even a volunteer capacity, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it needs to happen, but I think the problem is that right now, kind of association leadership needs a bit of an overhaul, right? Leadership. And again, I'm going in there. I'm speaking generally, right? So, you know, hoping nobody takes.
Yeah, I'm not trying to get you in trouble before you even start.
Yeah, yeah, but in general, right? And being part of it, I've seen it. Is that leadership has been treated like a reward rather than a journey. And if we can figure out what next generation leadership looks like and what it means, what needle are we trying to move, and find these micro volunteerism through major volunteerism opportunities, and then find the people that can fill it. I was asked to become a leader, and this is 15 years ago. I was asked to become one. And in an industry where people are so dang busy, the ask is going to be more important now going forward. So it's going to be going in there and talking to leaders, talking to these diverse folks with diverse backgrounds and perspectives and cultures, and saying, hey, you know, we've created this opportunity that's going to do X, Y, and Z. We'd love your help with that. The ask is going to be more important. The ask is going to need to be a lot more tactical and very strategic with people who right now don't have any time. And more than anything, what I'd love to do too is bring out industry into it. Denver is exploding. Lisa asked, who's making the ask? It's volunteers and staff, both, right? I think this is we're all.
I mean, that's culture, right? Culture isn't
totally.
One person. It's not one level. It's all levels, all things. It's who you are. It's what you do.
Totally. And if we all have the same kind of inclusive culture that's going to move the needle at the staff level and at the volunteer leadership perspective level, we're going to be fine. It really is though the ask, and it's seeking these people out, and it's more than anything. It's making sure the opportunities are clear, they're relevant, and they're going to move that needle when we say we are going to. And the opportunity in Denver is fantastic, but the opportunity everywhere is even more so. If you're in a city, what Michelle did was powerful, but she can do it because she's got that clout, right? She can get it done. But there are many more opportunities in every market that I've been in, because, and you mentioned it, kind of going full circle here. I look at most markets now that aren't expensive. They're not California, they're not Washington State, they're not New York, they're not Boston, not Chicago. You're gonna see Iowa get more diverse. You're gonna see Denver get even more so. Places like Boise, Idaho are gonna go nuts. So if I can go anywhere and work and live, become a realtor and get involved and move the needle, let's create those opportunities now. Create them now so that there's a landing spot for these folks when we can go out and ask them to be more involved.
Big question for you as we wrap up. Someone asked you to volunteer and get involved 15 years ago, and I think the majority of us know your path, and it's been a big and winding one, and you've seen a lot of the country in different scenarios and different roles in this industry. What's changed you most during that time because of your involvement in this organized real estate space?
Oh man, I'll tell you, you know, going in, I was pretty cynical
Wait, no, you still are. I don't know if you know this. You're like an old
Thanks,
man,
jerk.
cynical.
Dude, here's the thing though, and as much as I play that off, I'm inspired every day by the people that I meet. And my wife hated the fact that I traveled 190,000 miles last year, but I loved every minute of it because I was inspired so much by everybody that I met on the road. Every time I go out there, and I guess, but people like Stefan and Rob Hans, like, oh, the industry is dying. I'm like, no, it's not. Like you just not, you're talking to the wrong people, man. I every day I get inspired by the people that I meet that are they may not be doing things at the national level or at a very high profile, but man, they're carving out little niches of awesome that make me go, yeah, this is the reason why I am totally unemployable outside of this business, and I love it, right? And I want to stay into it, and I don't want to destroy it, because that was my thinking going in. It's like, man, let's just break this all down. The only time people in leadership react is when there's an emergency. But man, what I love about what's happening right now is that the unknown is palpable, and folks are realizing that they can carve out a niche of really cool things that create change that they want to see in their industry, in their community, and they can do it. You don't have to ask for permission anymore, right? Just get it done. We're in a time when culture expects that of us. Societally, people are expecting change to happen, and I think that's gonna become even more so as all of this crazy stuff starts to settle down. But man, everyone I meet is inspiring, and while I can be kind of that cynical jerk about some things, boy, it keeps me going, man. I love this industry, and
Yeah.
I love what these folks do.
Yeah, I'm on your team. I just, when I was looking at my options, the idea of going somewhere else where I didn't feel a part of something so much bigger than myself was just a non-starter. And so I think that's why so many get sucked in and stick around. Nobu, I so look forward to you getting to Colorado. Hopefully at some point we'll have the ability to grab beverages in person. And I look forward to what you do, not only in Denver, but what you do to alter the path of the industry as a whole. So thank you for your time. And oh yeah, by the way, some folks are wanting you to give up some dog training lessons because your dog's been such a good co-pilot there today.
He's been great, right? Usually he's a
Yeah.
jerk about this stuff. He destroys upholstery in the car, but yeah. The trick is to walk him for about a half an hour before in 90-degree heat before you start doing a webinar. Somebody
Perfect.
else asked me if I'm a snowboarder. I think that was you, Phil. I'm looking forward to getting back on that. I used to do a lot of that stuff as a kid, and I can't wait. I'm gonna, full disclosure, I will probably be doing a lot more spa. I miss massages right now. It's gonna be awesome, and I can have them again. I'm gonna go spend a week in the mountains just doing that, right? But yeah, it's good times, man. And thank you all out there. Folks, most of the people who are looking there, I can just see the chat. Y'all inspire me, and you guys are the major reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. And if we can all be better together, man, I'm looking forward to
Awesome. I'm gonna go work on my little niche of awesomeness now. So thanks so much,
it.
Nobu. All right, we'll talk to you, Nobu, later.
Thanks, guys. Bye, guys.
Thanks everybody for
Pick up my
tuning
wife.
in.